The Asch experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces of research. A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
Please begin.
The Asch conformity experiment has been repeated many times. It's been suggested that, first, the distortion happens at the level of action. The subject believes the others are wrong, yet goes along with them anyway. Then it happens at the level of judgment. The subject begins to think, maybe they're seeing something I'm not seeing. And then it happens at the level of perception, which means that the subject's actual perception of what's right or wrong is distorted by the majority. Now, when you link these conclusions to what's happening in the world today, you have to ask, in what way have we been using the influence of society, which is probably the most powerful force in human psychology?
Two people come to a psychology laboratory in a prestigious university. One of them is designated teacher, the other learner. The experimenter explains that the study is concerned with the effects of punishment on memory and learning.
Would you open those and tell me which of you is which, please? Teacher. Learn. Teacher. Now your job is to remember which one of these four other words was originally paired with blue. And you indicate your answer by pressing one of these four switches. Now can you reach those all right? Now if you get it correct, fine. If you make an error, however, you'll be punished with an electric shock.
Though the teacher does not know it, the learner is in fact an actor and will only pretend to receive shocks.
Now each time he gives a wrong answer, you move up one switch on the shock generator. And of course, we'll begin with 15 volts for the first wrong answer. Okay? Do not begin until I say ready, begin, please. Attention, learner. Your teacher is about to begin the test. Try and remember the word pairs.
That is incorrect. This one will be 195 volts. The correct one.
Let me out of here.
Slow. Dance.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let me out of here. You have no right to keep me here. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out.
Continue, please.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let
Go
me
on.
out. Let me
You're
out.
responsible for it. Red.
Next one.
I refuse to answer.
Well, you gotta keep getting a shock if you don't answer.
Continue, please. Go right on.
I refuse to go on. Let me out.
Refuses to go on.
The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue. Next word is sad.
This will be at 3:30. The correct phrase is rich
Let me out of
boy.
Necklace, moon, paint. Something's happened to that man in there. You better check in on him, sir. He won't answer you, nothing.
Please continue. Go on, please.
You accept all the responsibility?
The responsibility is mine. Correct. Please go on.
Gold.
150 volts.
here.
Sad face.
Experimenter. That's all. Get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now. Get me out of here, please.
Continue.
My heart's starting to
Continue,
bother me.
teacher.
I refuse to go on. Let me out.
I think we ought to find out what's wrong in there first.
The experiment requires that you continue, teacher.
Well, the experiment might require that we continue, but I still think we should find out what the condition of the gentleman is.
Now, as I said before, although the shocks may be painful, they're not dangerous.
Look, I don't know anything about electricity. I don't profess any knowledge, nor will I go any further until I find out if the guy's okay.
It's absolutely essential that you continue.
Well, essential or not, this program isn't quite that important to me that I should go along doing something that I know nothing about, particularly if it's going to injure someone. I don't know what this is all about.
Well, whether the learner likes it or not, we must go on until he's learned all the word pairs correctly.
Well, You can sure have your 450 back. I didn't want it anyhow. I intend to give it to some charitable organization, but I wouldn't go on with it.
The 450 is not the issue here. That check is yours simply
Yeah,
coming to the lab. It is essential that you continue the experiment.
No, it isn't essential. Not one bit.
You got no other choice, teacher.
Oh, I have a lot of choices. My number one choice is that I wouldn't go on if I thought he was being harmed.
Well, of 100 people placed in this situation, how many do you think would just go right on to the end?
Well, personally, I think if you get 1 or 2, you'd be lucky.
Prior to the experiment, a group of psychiatrists predicted that only 1 in 1,000 would continue to the last 450-volt switch. Almost 2/3 of the participants pulled every one of 30 shock switches, continuing until the researcher ended the experiment. Over the years, the experiment has been repeated many times in several countries, all with roughly the same results. Analysis of the data has found that the percentage of participants who are prepared to inflict fatal voltages, irrespective of gender, remains remarkably constant at around 65%. Throughout life, people are trained to obey parents, teachers, and employers, to obey the laws of society's gods and governments. This obedience pushes power up the social hierarchy. More power is concentrated in fewer hands. The worst crimes in history would not have been possible without mass obedience and conformity to the demands of power. From the policeman, scientist, and soldier to the journalist, lawyer, and intellectual.
Over 40 years ago, I was cloning stem cells, and one of the first experiments just so blew my mind that it really changed the whole course of my education and my life. I put one stem cell in a culture dish all by itself, and that stem cell divides every 10 to 12 hours. After about a week to 10 days, I have thousands of cells in the Petri dish, but what's most important is all these cells are genetically identical to each other. And then what I did, and this is the experiment, I separated a culture of genetically identical cells into 3 different Petri dishes, and I changed the environment. But the culture medium to cells is like the world that we live in. It's got the air, the water, the food, all the things in it. So I have 3 different environments, yet genetically identical cells in each dish, and the results revealed that in environment A, the cells form muscle, in environment B, the cells form bone, and in environment C, the cells form fat cells. What was so profoundly important about this is if you ask the question, what is responsible for controlling the fate of the cells? What the experiment clearly revealed was that all the cells were genetically identical. The only thing that was different from one dish to the other dish was the environment. So while at the time I was teaching medical students the conventional story out of the textbook, the concept of genetic determinism, that genes control our fate and our lives, my experiments revealed a completely different story, and that was, it was the environment that was primarily responsible in shaping the behavior and genetics.
Imagine 2 enemies on a battlefield. Suppose it were possible to go back in time and swap them at birth, so that each child would be raised in the other's culture. In time, would each not end up fighting for the other side? A different flag, a different religion, a different ideology?
There's an old story, the grandfather who's speaking to his grandson in the lodge, and the grandson comes in and says, I had a dream last night. In the dream, there were 2 wolves inside fighting, and one was a black wolf and one was a white wolf. And the black wolf scared me, grandfather, and the white wolf made me feel hopeful. Which one will survive? And the grandfather said, the one you feed the most. And so to me, that is the nature of humanity, the nature of humans, is we have both. Which one we're going to feed the most is the one we're going to see in the world.